I don't have any kids.
She doesn't have any kids. Haley's like,
Say that
yeah,
again?
she knows my kids, how my kids are.
Yeah, I know her kids, yeah.
Because we're on Zooms together a lot.
Yeah, a lot of people are learning about other.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
I know. Okay, I think we're live. So, welcome everybody. Can you see and hear me okay? I want to welcome you. We're talking today with a couple of great experts for our back to school theme, getting ready for back to school anti-racist style. And today we're talking about equity in the classroom, equity in our school systems, what parents and teachers need to know. And I'm hoping our two experts, I know they have some tools for us to put in our backpacks as we go back to school and to keep at home as we start school online. So if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna start with a quote from a wonderful education expert and a wonderful Black American, Marion Wright Edelman, who is the founder of the Children's Defense Fund and has been a children's right activist and advocate for disadvantaged people in our country her whole life. And Marion Wright Edelman says, education is for improving the lives of others and for leaving your community and world better than you found it. So I know the two ladies who are with us agree with us, and so I want to get their advice for us. So we're joined by one of our own members from our group, and her name is Marion Wilds. Hi, Marion. Marion's in her backyard.
Fighting the mosquitoes. Sorry, that's why you see me.
I know, I'm so sorry. And you are welcome to go inside if you decide to. We'll follow you wherever you go. Marion is a member of our group. So, hey, first, Marion, how did you hear about our group, Lake Highlands Area Moms Against Racism?
Well, I was in the also in the Lake Highlands Moms group, and so saw a lot of discussion about that, and then saw when this group popped up, and immediately I said, oh, this is definitely something that I want to be a part of. So yeah, that's how I found it.
I'm so thankful because we need your voice. Thank you so much. And especially since we're talking about education. Marion is a mom. So tell us about that first, Marion. What kids do you have?
So I have two boys, a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old, and yeah, so one going in the 5th grade and one going into pre-K. We'll see how that works virtually. That's going to be really fun. Yeah. And they're fabulous. My oldest son has received special education services, so I, have that background both as a parent and as an educator. So, but he's wonderful and doing awesome, and yeah, they're great boys.
And you're going back too as a teacher. So, well, you're more than a teacher. You're a campus facilitator, and you
right.
So tell us what that is.
So I'm a campus facilitator for special student services, and I kind of equate it to a special education instructional coach.
Okay.
So I support campuses, either go-to, so anything from compliance to instruction to behavior, whatever it might be, I'm that go-to person for awesome. The campuses that I serve. So
she's incredible.
Oh, thank you, Haley. You're so nice. So yeah, and I'm changing it. My campuses have changed. I just recently found out, and so this year I'm going to be at Lake Highlands High School and Lake Highlands Junior High for my campuses. So yeah, I'm really excited.
That is a big job. Gosh, both of those schools?
It's awesome. I mean, it's great. The position is one to where every Richardson school has a campus facilitator, so they have a support person for special education. So it's a newer position. this is the second year of this position, and they changed it from the ARD facilitator position that had been there previous. So,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
we're lucky you'll be nearby then helping our families in this neighborhood.
Yes, I'm very, very excited.
So you've been in Title I, DISD, and RISD schools, which
Yes.
gives you a lot of experience in working with a diversity of kids and families and backgrounds. And tonight, we're especially going to talk about the racial discrepancies both in gifted ed and in special education, and kind of that's opposite, right? There's an overassignment of Black males in special.
Yes.
Which, okay, so we'll get to that. That is
Yeah.
definitely part of what can lead and change lives, lead those kids down a path that changes lives. So we want to be part of changing lives for the better. So I want to introduce also, can you hear me, Haley?
Yes.
Okay. This is Haley Dupree. And how do you guys know each other?
So Marion and I were, or I guess are classmates. We graduated this month, or we will graduate this month. So we've spent the past year trauma bonding over some grad school, and but I'm so happy because we've gotten really a great opportunity to get to know each other and to get to know great other educators in the DFW area.
What is your degree in that y'all are getting?
Our degree is in educational leadership and policy.
We just graduated from SMU, so we're very
very
excited. Yeah.
Congratulations. So you now have a master's in education. What did you say?
Educational leadership.
Leadership and policy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, so you guys are the changers we need to help make some of these policy changes happen, right?
That's what we're going for.
I hope so.
So how do you want to get your voice across to, that would mean to the school board, to policymakers, what?
Yeah, I mean, so for me personally, I wanted to go into leadership because it really starts at the core with the students. I think sometimes leadership and policy gets a little off focus where the students are not at the center, but really everything is student focused, and every solution for education and any educational gaps that may occur is student focused. So if you can't have strong campuses, then it's difficult to it's difficult to make policy that supports those campuses. I think sometimes there's a detachment in what policymakers see and what's actually happening on campus. So if what's happening on campuses is so good and so significant, then policymakers have to pay attention.
Okay, so you're saying kind of start with making things happen in a smaller level on campus, and even for the particular students and families, and then point out what's working to the policy.
Right, like as administrators. So a lot of us will, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know, so we're focusing on racism and systematic racism, which we know is part of the school system. Where do you guys want to start with that? How do you see it playing out in schools?
Oh,
well, okay. So I'm laughing because Marion, I'm just so passionate about education. I could talk for hours about this. So I will try not to do that.
You can come back.
But part one.
yeah.
So I was talking to somebody today, and I was, kind of just making a joke, but like on the most basic level, the facilities. Okay. The most basic level, the facilities are so different. And like I was making a joke saying that, I can probably count on two hands the amount of times that I've woken up and said, I don't want to go to my job. And, over the past 4 years, right, that I've been in education, very rarely do I say that. But when I say it, I was telling this person earlier that it's because our AC is out and it's August or it's May or it's April and it's hot, or our heat is out and it's January and I can see my breath teaching.
Oh my.
And or because it's been raining and I have 3 buckets in my room because our ceiling tiles, or because there was a rat in one of my coworkers' classrooms.
Wait a minute. Where do you teach? Where do you work?
In Dallas.
Yeah, what school?
So I switched schools. I'm at a middle school this year. But I worked in Pleasant Grove and now I'm in Oak Cliff. So yeah, so it's, you know, like the facilities one is just like, wow, like there's a huge difference between schools in North Dallas versus schools in South Dallas, or, you know, below I-30. And yeah, those are the days that I don't buy at the school I was just at. I bought those little $2 throw blankets from Walmart because our heat went out and you could literally see our breath. You know, it's like 20 degrees outside. So on the most basic level, like how can you expect anybody to learn or work in those conditions?
Or Haley, to feel respected in those conditions and like their work,
Right.
like their work is valued and like their learning is valued.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, how do the students respond to that?
You know, honestly, I don't, and I hate to say this, but I really don't think that they know, anything better. I don't think that a lot of times they've experienced anything else. Okay. You know, I was working in high school with 11th grade, and so they are very cognizant of race and inequities. And so they know that there are better schools, and they know that those better schools are in predominantly white neighborhoods. But I don't think that they like can compare it. Or if we go to a function at a high school, you know, up north or something, then they'll say like, oh, this school's so nice, why don't we have X, Y, and Z? Okay. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's upsetting, and it's enlightening too. I didn't realize, I thought that was like maybe something from 25 years ago or from another city. But my shirt says Black Lives Matter, and lots of people are saying that. It's one of the things our group believes. And so when I think about the fullness of that phrase, and it can transform everything. It should transform everything. And one of the things it transforms is how we value education of Black lives. And if we say Black Lives Matter, but we're not giving you guys the correct AC and just basics you need in your school, then we're showing that it doesn't matter, that you don't matter, that the students don't matter. And so anyway, I just think we need to figure how this phrase pertains to everything, but definitely the basics of education. So thank you for pointing that out. What do you think should be done about that? That's about taxes and housing. So what do you think is the easiest solution?
Well, I was just going to weigh in real quick too and just say about that, because let's say even if the facility is okay looking, it doesn't mean the funding is still the same for schools with predominantly Black students than it is for white students. And those are the things that aren't typically public record, right, when you're really digging into which departments and which schools get what. But it's something that needs to be brought up because the funding is not there for schools, and so we have to start with that, of changing that. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. No, I 100% agree. And to an extent, you know, districts do have responsibility and local policymakers do have responsibility. But on the other hand, it's like impacts of things like the No Child Left Behind Act, where schools get federal funding based on their standardized tests. It's kind of it is a difficult situation, but you know, there's responsibility on both ends. And then you also have to consider this idea that, and this repetition that's really been happening since 2001, in which standardized testing is used to reinforce behavioral racism.
Yes.
Right? Because like, how can you expect students to learn in those conditions? But then, of course, you know, scores, I can't focus when my classroom is 90 degrees and I'm sweating bullets. And how can I expect students to focus on like the Constitution, you know, like, and so it's just this, it's a terrifying cycle.
And that's actually part of the inequities, like when we are talking about special education, one of those reasons that Black males are overassigned or overrepresented in special education is because of that, you know, that focus on student performance. And so when they don't have the student performance that they're supposed to, then they say, oh, well, let's look to SPED. So then they can be in SPED and have special testing and maybe things that will help them do that. So that's one of the things that, one of the reasons is historically, and what facts and research show is one of the reasons that that happens.
Really? So, okay. I'm starting from scratch here. The funding is given out partially based on the test scores.
Yes.
Test scores. Okay. And beyond that, the funding also happens because of the homeowner taxes. And so that affects it too. And these are, okay. So one big fix would be equal funding no matter what area you live in, right?
I would say, well, honestly, it's in the beginning, the schools that are not doing so well probably need more funding, because those are the schools that are behind in technology. They don't have as many books. They don't have as many teachers. They don't have the ability to train teachers or retain teachers, or, you know, whatever the case may be.
Right. They don't have the resources like the other schools. So they just need more funding to even catch up to where the other schools are. And then maybe there could be an equal ground, but that's not going to happen until those other schools get what they need.
Okay, and we're talking about basic funding, but beyond that, there are schools that have PTAs that raise extra money for all kinds of extra stuff too. And the extracurriculars and all things.
Right.
A discrepancy there as well. And how does that affect the kids?
There's a huge, Haley, I was just thinking about Dr. Pavlakis a lot today, just thinking about things we were going to talk about, but there are discrepancies in PTAs too, and a lot of these schools don't even have PTAs or PTOs or whatever the organizations might be. And so, yeah, that's just another inequity in the school. I mean, it's just, and so they're not getting funding from anywhere.
Yeah, so what one of our teachers watching is saying, and we've seen this in videos we've watched, that education discrepancies are on purpose and part of this prison to school pipeline. So what do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, do I think that there's like a bunch of policymakers sitting in a room saying like, ha, 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 the poor brown kids, they're gonna suffer? I mean, maybe, but I think what it more likely is it's a lack of purposefulness to solve problems. And, you know, it's very political, but it's still a lack of purposefulness and a lack of will and a lack of intention to stand up and say like, hey, something needs to be done. So while I don't think it's like, you know, everybody's plotting against the brown kids, which like I said, could very well be true. Right. But, I think it's more so trying to avoid.
Yeah. Just not.
I think it's more so trying. Yeah. We're just not gonna pay attention. We're just gonna, you know, push it off and, you know, not take responsibility for, even if it's not our actions, we're not going to take responsibility for the system that has been created and that we're now responsible for.
Okay. So what should teachers know? Well, y'all go where you want to go with this. Where do you want?
I would just like to add a quick little quip about standardized testing, because I'm really, I have issues. Sorry, all my dogs in the background, probably barking to be let into my room. But if he does, he'll knock everything over. So, But yeah, standardized testing is so, and Marion can probably co-sign with me on this, and the standards for success in education are so oriented towards the white middle class, that, you know, even the way that we measure success is very white and is very classist. So when you think about it, like if you if you look at a standardized test on like an English exam, and there's the word yacht, right? Like a boat. You know, how many kids, if you haven't been exposed to it on TV or in person, or you've never been to a marina or a harbor, or you've never even seen the ocean, how many kids will know what a yacht is?
Yeah.
And so they're spending the whole, you know, then they get caught up in their mind of what is a yacht? I'm still trying to figure out what is a yacht. You know, and so then next thing they know, the time is up, or, you know, they get discouraged or frustrated, and, you know, that's all they can think about is the yacht.
Oh gosh. That is yeah. So that's a great example. How else do you mean it can be swayed, tilted towards white kids doing better, middle class white kids?
Yeah, I mean just the vocabulary, right? Like it's not culturally responsive, and I think that vocabulary stretches across all contents. It's not just in English. Right. But even in math, it says like we're gonna break up a quiche. You know, what is a quiche? A quiche, you know, throws off kids, especially if that's not your culture, you know, or you have no exposure to anything like a yacht or a quiche, or what are you looking at? What are they even talking about?
So we need people screening these tests to make sure they're culturally equal.
Yeah, preferably people of color. Screening the tests.
And absolutely. Of course, this year, is it true that we're not even going to have to take the test this year?
I haven't heard that. I so far the test has been scheduled. They had that scheduled before, you know, COVID guidelines, but that's just another rant. But I read something recently that it wouldn't count, like the scores basically wouldn't count. Nobody was going to be penalized for, you know, not passing. So they wouldn't be like held back or anything from not passing the score, you know,
well, maybe
passing the test. But
do you
honestly haven't got it because I have not heard us being canceled out there. This ready to go.
Okay. Do you guys agree that if we didn't have to focus on the standardized testing, that the teachers could accomplish more at the kids where they are with their level and do actual more learning? What do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that there is some type of accountability that needs to be in place, right?
Yes.
Like that's a regular function of work, is accountability, but, you know, growth standards or, you know, growth measurements or improvements, and meeting those versus meeting a set standardized level.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me say a couple things from the comments, and then I want to see where y'all want to go next. Yeah, Danita is telling us that the testing has been delayed for this year. So hopefully that's true for all the, I thought I'd seen that the TEA or governor said that.
That's great. That's great news.
And then, so maybe we'll get used to that. That would be good. And that Robin Hood funding is what we were talking about related to the testing incentives, that hopefully that was supposed to end in 2019. So anyway, but that's something for us to look into, because that does not sound fair. And I know that at least there are incentives for the particular schools, right? And even sometimes the teachers.
So I think it's different for each district. Yeah, it's just different.
Okay.
And teacher pay is the whole other issue.
Okay, so we've talked about.
But yeah, I was just gonna say there's still accountability. So even if, what happens is that TEA will come in, let's say that scores for special education haven't been growing, or not enough kids in special education have passed the test in 3 years, then they'll come in and they'll, ask you to have a plan and, do all this stuff. And so there are ways that people don't understand how they come in and kind of, I shouldn't use the word bully, but that's what it is. They're supposed to be there to support you, but it's very difficult if you have the state coming into a school, or the idea that, okay, if you don't get your scores up by next year, then the state is going to come into your school to change these things. So those things still happen regardless.
Okay, so we talked about the facilities, the funding, those things being unequal, and of course leading to, I would say, a sense that the teachers and students feel the inequality, and I would think that changes their effort level. What other inequities do you want to point out?
I mean, where do you want to go with this, Haley? I don't know. When we were talking about just schools, we were talking about standardized testing and how it's geared towards like the white or middle class thing, but that's not just standardized testing. It's really everything. It's the whole school system, basically,
Yeah.
and also how we treat parents. And that's something that I wrote down, because I know, Lowry, we talked a little bit about like kind of these microaggressions and implicit biases, these things that happen in schools that people don't realize. And a lot of that is also not just to the students, but towards the parents. And there's just this whole idea that, the help that we want from parents and the things that we want from parents are really geared toward this white middle class idea of school, and not, really respecting and valuing what, parents, any different ethnicities, cultures can bring to our school with us. And so that's just something that, I was thinking about when Haley was talking about that white middle class outlook, kind of.
So specifically for our PTA playbook, and we're going to be putting together a checklist for PTA leaders of what they should be checking for, to do and not do when they're introducing events and that kind of thing. What should we ask PTA?
So don't do like a World Cultures Appreciation Night.
Why not?
Do you agree with that, Marion?
I think that it should be more consistent, because I think just doing like one night, we're going to do this. This is our, obligatory culture night, and then we don't have to think about it anymore. And it shouldn't be just one night. It should be something that's ongoing.
Right. If a school has a high Middle Eastern population, at school functions or events, or meetings or PTA meetings, incorporate that, right? Like it's a responsibility to educate yourself on the culture as well. We expect people to assimilate so effortlessly into American culture without being considerate of other people's culture and feeling like we have to take on the responsibility to educate ourselves too. So, if it's something's happening and there's a large X, Y, and Z population in the school, put forth effort to educate yourself on what does that look like? What subject can I ask them to speak on, or what do I need to provide to make people feel more like they belong in this space, because they do belong in this space. What subjects are they, what language is confusing to their students in the literature or in the whatever, what Middle Eastern authors can I find to introduce to the teachers? It's a whole variety of fully incorporating the culture, and not just having a World Cultures Appreciation Night.
How can you teach about the different holidays that they might celebrate?
Right.
Know when those are, so you're not expected to take a test the next day. But I have been to Skyview's Multicultural Night, and because they have so many awesome cultures represented at that school, it's quite a celebration. and all the families come out. So I think there are good ways you can do it, but I hear what you're saying, make it more than.
Yeah, make it more than one night, because it's cute for one night, but it doesn't mean anything to pass that one night, because and that's really, and that was a mistake that I just made too, is so many times when we think about those world culture nights, we just think about food, right? And maybe music, dancing, I don't know, right? But everybody, no matter, like, everybody has something more to contribute than food.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, so it'll take more than one night. I love that. Now, do you feel like, what about, because that school had the cultures to represent and they all walked together with their flags and it was beautiful. But if the kids at my school at LHE had done that, there may have been maybe 3 cultures. Should kids like that do that too?
I think that it kind of goes back to the point that Marion was saying, that you have to, that everybody needs to be considered and everybody has to be involved. So schools really are a community, are a community. So whatever is in your community, that's what you need to take care of. And of course, it's important to educate and, maintain open-mindedness and all these other things. But whatever is at your school, whoever's in your community, that's what you need to take care of. And then you educate and you incorporate appropriately.
And beyond that, like, what, I don't know if you've heard, we're doing the city baskets across Lake Highlands, so that even schools that do have mostly white children, they're getting exposed, at least through books and art, to children from other backgrounds and cultures. That's important, even if those kids are not in your class, it's still important.
Right. And I think, if we're on the subject of what PTAs might need, I think the biggest thing is two-way communication, because a lot of times it's the school or the teacher or whoever it is saying, this is what we need. I need you to do this, this, this. This is what we're doing at our school. But we're not, eliciting feedback from the parents and what they want for the school and what they think that they can to the school. Because if a parent is going to be check something off that list of what the school is wanting, and so why would they want to contribute if they feel like they're not valued and that they can't give something that the school wants? So there are so many different things that parents can, provide for the school, in so many different ways to do it. And so I just think that two-way communication needs to happen. It shouldn't be just the schools telling the parents what to do. Parents are the hugest advocates for their children anyway, and they want what's best for their kids. And if they want to contribute, they should feel comfortable doing that. And so
Marion, what are some specific ways that you think a PTA could welcome, and what are some other ways, can you get us to start thinking outside the box of how other parents could contribute?
I think there are a lot of different ways. I think just, again, eliciting that feedback either through surveys or just what their expectations of, for their child, what they expect from the school, what they think they can contribute to the school, anything like that can be done through surveys, through handouts, whatever it is. But I think and also just giving, letting the parent tell you, this is when I'm available, this is a good time to call me, or this is a good time when I can do this, or I don't have transportation or childcare, so is there something that we can do for that? So I think just looking at all the different possibilities and anything that PTAs do, they don't need to just do it this one time, maybe at an evening thing that a lot of parents can't come to. They need to do it multiple times in multiple areas in multiple ways so they can reach as many parents as possible.
Okay.
I also want to add on to that too, just kind of like as a caution to all PTAers, is that, don't just look out for your child. And I know that's hard to I'm not a parent, but I'm sure that's hard to move past, because of course, everybody wants what's best for their kid. But there are going to be groups of students who don't have advocates, who don't have adult advocates on campus. So when you're proposing as PTAers, as you're proposing policy, or as you're proposing event ideas or issues that are occurring at this school, don't consider it only from your perspective or from your child's perspective, because sometimes what winds up happening is that PTA, which is, I'm going to assume, predominantly white, because the schools that I work at don't have PTA like that, are, can be very influential, and, can potentially influence campus policy to not benefit students of color or students who maybe are of a lower income.
Yeah, it's the PTA's job to represent all the students
Everybody.
and families.
Right.
And also, but going into that, something that we also talked about too, Lowry, is that parents have to be real careful, PTA members have to be really careful to not also assume that a person of color that has come to join might not have the funds or might not have that, because that happens all too often, where it's like, oh, do you need help? I have this scholarship. And it's like, well, I didn't ask you about this, and that's just, it's unacceptable. So those are the things that we have to watch. It's like, you're coming from a kind heart, you have good intentions, but you're also assuming something,
I call it nice racism, polite racism.
Nice, yeah, polite racism.
Yeah, so I'll tell you guys, we're working on a list for the PTA. We're working on a list, and we'll send that to the PTA councils to share with all the PTA across RISD, but anybody could use it. So for DISD too, just kind of suggestions to double check the things you're doing. But also we're making a list for the teachers, things not to say to students. And we don't expect the teachers to understand why on all of these things, but we just want to share from people's experience what is hurtful, even things they may not know are hurtful, so that from day one, they can know that it is unacceptable to say these things. Anyway, so as we work on that list, we would love I'll send it to you guys, and we'd love for you to help give your thoughts and add to it. If you haven't, you want to say now, that's fine, but I also want to get to some other stuff. But I love, we've talked about, so I love what you said, Marion, about not assuming something because they're a certain color. So that's really good. I want to hear more about the racial discrepancies in gifted ed. Mm-hmm. I don't really know a lot about that, and what you think can be done about it.
Really, and I am definitely not an expert on gifted because my specialty is more special education. However, just the discrepancy, exactly like you said at the beginning, where you have this overassignment or overrepresentation of Black males in special education. It's a complete opposite with gifted or gifted and talented, or whatever it is that you want to call it. And especially, and also with gifted, they're Hispanic and English language learners, so students are very underrepresented as well. And so I don't know there's ways, it's very easy for campuses to do an equity audit. It could be for any reason. Of course, we have federally, and on the grander scale of things, we have the OCR, Office of Civil Rights, that does that, right? But for schools, and something that Haley, did you do your equity audit on discipline?
I did, yeah.
You did. And so what we see, and just like I said, research shows these discrepancies. And so if a teacher sees it on campus, because sometimes you can literally physically see that this is happening on a campus. So you can walk into a campus, that is, predominantly Black and Hispanic students, right? And there's not one person and there's not a gifted program there, or there might be 2 students there. And it shouldn't, whatever the student population is, whatever percentage of the student population you have in the school, that should be the same percentage represented
Yes.
and gifted, and it's not. That is not happening at all. And
Yeah.
so there's a bat. Sorry. Crazy. I love bats. I just don't like them that close to me. I'm just saying. Sorry. I got very distracted. So anyway, these equity audits that we're talking about are just very easy to do, and you do it to look at SPED populations, the ELL populations, discipline, and gifted. And so, and it's not really about just doing these equity audits. It's about, basically confronting these discrepancies in your school, saying, hey, let's do this equity audit. And now, most importantly, what are we going to do about it? What changes are we going to make in our school to make sure that this doesn't happen? And so if we go down that road, that's awesome. I know in SPED, it's very complicated because a lot of this stems from, people recommending evaluations and things like that. And sometimes we can't control that, right? Because they were evaluated in a different school district or by somebody else, or, 7 years ago when they were very young. But it's, a lot of it stems, a lot of the students, especially Black males, that are being overrepresented in special education, it's for behavioral issues like emotional disturbance, or they're diagnosed with an intellectual disability. And that really stems from the inequities in schools in general. And, without consistent intervention, or RTI, MTSS, whatever you want to call it, there are so many things happening, and that could prevent them from having these gaps in academics or social emotional learning or whatever it may be. That is very unfair, because the inequities were there to begin with, and they are what kind of caused this performance issue or gap in learning, or whatever you want to call it, for them to even be referred, for evaluation. And so it's just, I could go on. Haley, did you want to add anything to that?
Haley, will you tell us more about the inequity audit? How do we invite those?
So, I'm sure PTA as an entity has, if you ask the administration, hey, we want an equity audit on this, on X, Y, and Z, whether you want it on discipline or, special ed or GT numbers, I feel like they would be hesitant, but I think that with enough pressure, administration will give in. If their heart's in the right place, you would hope that they would do it willingly. But like Marion said, it's very easy to conduct.
Okay.
The math is very simple. I'm really bad at math, and I was able to do it. So.
Okay, so tell us about.
Yeah, it's having those crucial conversations and have.
It sounds more like a tool.
I'm sorry, say that again.
It's definitely a tool.
And it shouldn't be a threat then. It sounds like it's a tool for becoming better, helping you become better. Just, I guess the word sounds intimidating.
Yes,
it does. And it can be hard when you look at your numbers and say, oh, we're disciplining Black boys 214% higher than than everybody else. Like, that's uncomfortable. That's an uncomfortable conversation that you have to have with, with your staff and with your teachers and with the community. But, that's the responsibility of school leadership.
Right. Yeah. And when one believes Black Lives Matter, that's our responsibility to take that seriously. Okay. Exactly. So first of all, I want to say we have an amazing head of the Emily, I'm going to get this wrong, Emily Villa Robbins, who is one of our moderators and helped get this page started, is head of the Gifted RASD Alliance or whatever. So I know she's cares a lot about equity in our gifted education and is working closely with them to correct that. But Haley, I want to hear more.
We have a lot of great people I know working with the gifted, with SPED, with everything. I think Richardson for sure is on the right path, and they do a lot, and they're very transparent about making these changes. So absolutely, I agree with that.
I feel good about that direction.
Yeah.
What about Haley? I would love for you to tell us more about your particular audit with behavior and what you want teachers to know and what you want parents to know.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the same probably results that you'll find in any school, is that Black boys were overly disciplined. And then Black girls and Hispanic boys and Hispanic girls, and then the few white students at our school, you know, were disciplined at an appropriate rate. So, you know, and they're going to find those exact same. I would be shocked to find a school that is not producing those results.
Right, because research shows it's all over the country. We're not just talking,
those results are not anything special.
Yeah.
It's what's happening in, you know, tens of thousands of schools everywhere. So, you know, I think from a teacher perspective, white teachers have to educate themselves, you know, and I'm going to go ahead and throw this in there too. Some older teachers need to educate themselves. And be willing to understand culture and language and how language is used, and often and the perspectives on respect and what that looks like in different cultures, and how respect is earned, or if it isn't earned, and it's, you know, a lot of times in white American culture, respect is assumed. Teachers get upset about a student using a conversational manner, you know, and then it blows up to something that it shouldn't be, you know. So I think it's just kind of learning to some extent, you know, what are you going to really be okay with in your classroom, and you know, how I hate to say that, but you can't. If you try to stop every 17-year-old from cussing in your classroom, like, you're going to wear yourself out. And so, but also, you know, just because some language is used doesn't mean it's being used in an offensive way. And of course, you know, you do have to have standards for a classroom, but teachers also have to be willing to understand, like, you know, the balance of what's going on. I also think too, you have to understand that, like, certain, like, horseplay may be viewed as acceptable, or it may be viewed as whatever, or whatever the case is. Like, you have to be able to understand, and I'm not saying that those things should be taking place in a school, but in order to not produce those results of discipline, of extreme discipline, you have to be able to understand, why is it happening? Okay, it's because, you know, it's acceptable to, you know, joke around and, like, pull each other's hair or whatever, or, you know, it's acceptable to do that, or, like, jokingly hit somebody, like, that's fine to do. But then, okay, like, how am I going to approach it from that angle to say, like, okay, in this setting, this is what we're going to do instead, versus just writing a write-up and now the kid's out of the class for a whole day.
And that is not the goal. That should not be the outcome. It should not be that. We know research shows how damaging.
So it's
You're frozen there for a minute. I didn't get the last part. No, but yeah, it's not acceptable for students to be out and not learning, and especially for just minor infractions that get looked over all the time for other students or white students.
So it sounds like
it's
go ahead, Haley.
I'm sorry, can you ask that again? I was just gonna say, like, yeah, it's, you know, it's, and I think that people in general, just because of our society, are programmed to believe that Black people or people of darker complexions are more aggressive, or if you have an accent, you know, that's more aggressive, or not as literate maybe, or whatever the case may be. And so it's also just being, like, super cognizant of those thought processes, that, okay, you know, like, just because they jokingly elbow somebody doesn't make them aggressive, right? They're just being kids. Like, that's what kids do. but it's that programming that people have, is that, oh, well, this thing that could be perceived as aggressive because it's a Black person, my brain automatically connects it to aggression.
Yeah. And you're talking about, you're saying programming, you're talking about our unintentional biases that are in our brains, and I've been learning about that with my kids this week. So there are lots of
right.
Implicit biases, yeah.
all kinds of resources out there for parents, for teachers to learn how to check their biases, and they should all be required to training, right? And then
or like if a Black kid raises their voice at me, I feel threatened. When again it's a kid. Like, why would you feel threatened by a child unless they're actually throwing things at you? You shouldn't feel threatened. Yes. Or unless they're actually charging you, you shouldn't feel threatened.
Don't call in the security officer.
Right.
Yeah. So in our members too, if they haven't watched, we did a watch party of this amazing movie, Push Out, about the criminalization of Black girls in American even showing like a 5-year-old girl getting suspended and getting taken to the office by a security officer. And I'm trying to get closer to my internet router. So please go back and watch that, especially teachers, because it's so crucial that we see what's happening and check ourselves. And the truth is, most of our teachers are white women. I'm going to ask my brother, who's an educator. He told me today about a great book he'd read for white women teaching Black boys. So he's going to add that to the comments. And I know Danita and others are adding great stuff to the comments. So there's lots of learning to be done. But also, what else is your biggest takeaway? What else can teachers and parents do, Haley, about the discipline?
About the discipline, I think it's just, of course, being educated and being able to check your biases. I think that's the biggest, most important thing. And then also, like, just being the adult in the situation, right? Like, just being the adult, because there's been so many times where I've seen or heard of teachers escalating the situation, and just being the adult, walking away.
Power struggle. It's you get into a pet power struggle, and it's just nothing's gonna come out of that.
Right. And then what teachers might do is they'll say, well, I'm just gonna write you a referral, and which is whatever. Of course, if it's warranted, it can be warranted, but I feel like so many teachers use it as a way of, oh, I'm just going to win this battle. I'm going to write the referral and that's it. But maybe they don't know that that was the last referral that sends the kid to suspension or, 3-day suspension, or we call it DAEP, the alternative school, or whatever. And then that you teach the kid that this is what they're being treated, right? You're criminalizing a child, and it's traumatic and it's degrading.
Trajectory. It changes the trajectory of their lives.
Right.
And I'm seeing so many similarities in what you're talking about with what's happening with the police situation. It's a mirror. It's a mirror image of the escalating and just wanting to win the battle as a personal thing. But in these situations, the teachers have to model as the adult what they would like the child to do. And this movie, if you guys watching, go back and watch it, it also offers some great examples of what should be happening instead, and shows some super healthy ways of handling these conflicts and giving the girls and students the tools they need to get through these. And I also hear you saying, Haley, teachers and administrators need to adjust their boundaries a little bit, because our goal is keeping those kids in school and making it work.
Yeah. And it's that. And it's also, it's not saying, of course, to lower a standard. If you want students to reach X, Y, and Z point, you should be setting them on a trajectory to meet a point. But you can't expect students to come from one thing and, immediately overnight or over 6 weeks or however long adjust. It'd be like me asking kids any student coming in from summer break, like, okay, who's ready to study for, you know, whatever. Who's ready to read 30 pages of historical text? Nobody's ready to do that the first day back from school. And nobody's going to want to do that. You know, it's just a wild expectation to just force kids to expect students to assimilate so rapidly. And really, I mean, to assimilate at all, but definitely to assimilate so rapidly.
And I think teachers especially, I mean, you can't hold grudges, right? Like every day is a new day. Like it doesn't matter if the most horrific thing happened yesterday.
Okay.
It's a new day. And that student, you cannot stay mad at a student. You can't continue things that happen because they, you know, they need consistency. They need that positive, they need to know this is
and they need forgiveness.
Yeah, they need forgiveness. They need grace. They need to know that you're still there no matter what.
Right.
They need security, especially
Yes.
right now. They need security.
Yes.
Please give them a place of security and acceptance,
Yes.
no matter what. And just the idea, Haley, like you're saying, teachers should be expected to have an understanding of the different backgrounds and baggage that every single kid, no matter what color, comes in with. And we just have to give them a chance to, we have to understand that the way they're talking outside might be totally different, and the way they're disciplined at home might be totally different. And so we have to give grace, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I know Danita has told me before for her Black son that the teacher had issues, even just based on a really small incident, and that he got sent to the principal, even though she should have just called mom about it. And if she'd given mom a chance to say, you know, he just was not feeling like talking. You know, sometimes kids don't feel like talking. It was something like that. Danita can explain it more, but yeah, so a parent being involved too really helps.
Mm-hmm.
Good advice for the
Absolutely. Parents. Yeah, parents should be being called anyway. I mean, that's just, it should never escalate from just happening in the classroom unless it's something like super aggressive or physically, you know, unsafe. You shouldn't just send a child to the principal's office. You need to, you know, you need to try to figure it out, but then you need to get the parent involved and to try to figure out what's going on to get to the root of the problem. And so but that's just another one of those things too. I think those, like, one of those microaggressions or, you know, implicit biases that happen is that teachers will say, well, I'm not going to call the parent. They're not going to answer. They don't answer for school, or they're working, or they're not going to care. And where it's like, it is very rare that a parent doesn't want the best for their child and want to know what's going on. And so we have to remember that we can't just make those assumptions, you know.
Well, what is a tool that you guys want families to have going back into the school year, this weird, strange school year? I guess thinking about going back to actual classrooms at some point, for especially if they're parents who have kids of color, what's a tool that you want them to have to make this a successful year with the relationship with the teacher? Just those open lines of communication. Oh gosh. Marion, can you hear me? Am I back on?
Yeah. Yes. No.
I don't know what happened, but there's you guys have so much to share, and I just want to thank you so much for being with us. And we'll have to do a follow-up because I know there's more to say, and maybe a follow-up with like, how are things going? What do you see is happening, or are you seeing efforts being made to change things? Are you seeing teachers try things differently? And
Right.
Absolutely. And we'd love to hear from the parents too, and the teachers in this group to see, what they're experiencing, and if they're bringing things up, what's the reception of that, of just, how are people taking it? What are, people's responses? And I'm looking forward to that and hoping that it's very positive.
yes, Marion, how do you think that starting virtually and some students continuing virtually is going to impact students as far as equity goes? I think districts are trying to definitely make the effort to make sure students and families have what they need.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think that, and what I saw in the spring and even just coming forward in the this year, the teachers in the district has been amazing. I mean, just going above and beyond to make sure that the kids and parents have whatever they need. And I mean, there have been visits to homes to give, materials or resources, whatever they might need. And even just the efforts of, like, if somebody hasn't been able to get a hold of a student or parent, it's not just a give up. I mean, they're just really trying to get a hold of people. So that effort has been wonderful. And I just hope that this is just such a crazy time. And I want us to be able to reach out and to contact every student and parent. And I hope that we can do that, because we as teachers, we think about our kids all the time, every day. So that effort has been amazing.
And you deserve a lot more money and respect for what you guys do. So yeah.
Agreed.
Appreciated. Haley, are you still there?
Oh, you're on mute.
Haley, I was going to tell you, first of all, we'd love for you. I know you don't have kids, but that is just fine. We want you to be a member of our group. We need your voice.
Yeah, of course.
I love your shirt. And I want to, how do you think the kids in DISD are handling this virtual stuff? Are they getting what they need?
I think that the district, like Marion said, is making a real effort. I think campuses are making a real effort. There may be some disagreement on if that effort is misplaced or if it's appropriate, but I think that the biggest thing that the pandemic has done in a good way is really exposed a lot of these inequities.
Yes.
And I think it was something crazy, like 30 or 40% of homes in Dallas didn't have Wi-Fi before this. So the district was really working hard, and it took a while, but this year there'll be a lot more equipped to provide Wi-Fi for students. So I think that's part of it. I mean, like I said, there's effort. Is it misplaced? Is it not? Who knows? And everybody has their own opinions on that, but at least there's some movement in a new direction. So that is encouraging in some ways. I do feel bad for students because they're social. I don't like looking at a Zoom screen for 8 hours a day. And I don't like doing interactive Zooms or anything like that. So I know students need that.
If people watching this have stuck through to the end, good for you, and thank you for your patience. And well, Haley, you look great on Zoom, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, so much. I will follow up and see how I can thank you with pizza or a donation or something like that. And also, oh yes, I hope our viewers will go back and watch that Push Out movie about the way that Black girls are treated in our education system. I think every teacher should watch it.
Can I also recommend a documentary on Netflix? Mm-hmm. It's called Teach Us All. and it's kind of about, well, it is about how schools continue to be segregated.
Yes.
It is phenomenal.
Good.
And it really kind of teaches on, or really kind of speaks on just everything we've, a little bit of everything that we've talked about tonight.
Okay, well, we'll do a watch party, and you watch with us and comment and teach us while we're watching.
Of course.
Okay, and yes, you're right. The pandemic is horrible. It is exposing inequities, and it's giving us some time to reflect and think about what we are going to do to change them. So I want to challenge all the people watching to start thinking about how they are going to get involved in changing them. And we'll be giving you some take action items. The first one this month is to contribute to our diversity baskets, to get those in all our Lake Highlands classrooms. So look and see how you can do that. And thank you, ladies. Y'all deserve a good night's sleep. And Marion, you can go inside from the mosquitoes and bats.
Yeah, am I? Yes.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Thank you.
Thanks for all you do. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.